live from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
A pleasant evening and a very warm welcome to the National News of Rupavahini on ChannelEye. I'm Delanjali Ananda. Joining me is Chaitamini Purarachi. And these are the top stories which have made headlines for tonight. Prime Minister invites parliamentarian Anurakumara to unveil his plans to address the current economic crisis. A ship carrying 40,000 metric tons of urea will reach Sri Lanka by 9th of this month. Cabinet approval for more concessions to reduce debt burden of small-scale farmers. Litro says a gas shipment of 3,724 metric tons will reach the country on Saturday. Northern fishermen seek new initiatives to continue their livelihood amidst the severe fuel crisis. Bank of England warns UK economic outlook as deteriorated. Now for those and other stories in detail, on your top story, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa attended the Parliament session today.
Top story.
The President, who arrived at the Parliament complex, was welcomed by the Leader of the House, Dinesh Gunawardena, and the members of Parliament of the ruling party. At the time, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was presenting the roadmap with proposed solutions to the existing economic issues to the Parliament. The President entered the chamber and listened to the Prime Minister's speech. The first round of discussions with the International Monetary Fund has been a success, but the assistance depends on the debt restructuring program, which Sri Lanka has to come up with, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe told Parliament today.
At the same time, Prime Minister has asked parliamentarian Anurakumara Dissanayake to submit his emergency response plan to the President. If he doesn't want to go to the President, present it to the Parliament and the Prime Minister instead. If the plan is better and more effective than the plan Mr. Wickremesinghe's government is implementing now, it will be implemented. Making a special statement in the House, Mr. Wickremesinghe said Sri Lanka will hand over a debt restructuring program report to IMF in August this year. The expert companies which have to be hired are in the process of preparing a debt restructuring program and will be handing over to the report onto the IMF in August this year, the Prime Minister said. Sri Lanka had held talks with IMF on many occasions before, but this time the situation is different from all those previous occasions. In the past, we have held discussions as a developing country. In such a case, both parties have only to reach an agreement on the IMF or extend credit facility. It is likely moving along a straight line. However, now the situation is different. We are now participating in the negotiations as bankrupt country. Therefore, we have to face a more difficult and a complicated situation than previous negotiations. Once a staff level agreement is reached, this will be submitted to the IMF Board of Directors for approval. But due to the state of bankruptcy and our country as a in, we have to submit a plan on the debt sustainability to the theme separately. Only then, when they are satisfied with that, what plan can be reached an agreement at the staff level. This is not a straightforward process. We have been able to end the round of discussions effectively despite these difficulties. According to the IMF officials' announcements, positive and productive discussions were held on supportive economic policies and reforms. Significant progress was achieved. Now, the next step is to submit to the plan on the debt restructuring and sustainability, which has been prepared by financial and legal experts Lazards and Clifford's Chance. We hope to submit this report to the IMF by August, he added. Our economy is currently shrinking. We are trying to reverse it. According to central bank statistics, our current economic growth rate is between -4 and -5. According to IMF statistics, it has been -6 and -7. This is a serious situation. If we make a determined journey along this roadmap, we can achieve an economic growth rate of -1 by the end of 2023. By 2025, our aim is to create a surplus in the primary budget. Our effort is to raise the economic growth rate to a stable level. Our expectation is to establish a stable economic base of 2026. I would like to give you an idea of the debt we have to pay off for $3.4 billion between June and December this year. 5.8 billion in 2023, 4.9 billion in 2024, 6.2 billion in 2025, $4 billion in 2026, $4.3 billion in 2027. The total debt burden of the government at the end of 2021 was at $17.5 trillion, and by March 2022, it has increased to rupees 21.6 trillion. Meanwhile, we pay special attention to state banks. They have been beaten from both sides. On the other hand, the economic crisis. On the other hand, the huge amount of loans that they have given to state enterprise. As of March 31st, 2021, Sri Lankan Airlines owes 541 billion. As of May 31st, 2022, the Electricity Board owes 418 billion. Petroleum Corporation owes 1.46 trillion. When public enterprise continue to incur losses, the entire citizen surpasses. People who have never travelled on a plane in their lifetime are suffering for the loss of Sri Lankan Airlines. The people who have paid money for fuel and their lives are suffering from the losses of Petroleum Corporation. After hours, days and days of waiting in queues to get fuel, they pay compensation to the oil company to cover their loss of company. The people who get electricity by paying money, after all the life, sit in dark for several hours a day and suffer for the loss of the Electricity Board. We will have to restructure Electricity Board, Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Sri Lankan Airlines, he also highlighted.
Minister Mahinda Amaravira says that the first ship carrying 40,000 metric tons of urea fertilizer will reach Sri Lanka next Saturday.
He made those comments at the cabinet press briefing held this morning. The minister said that the Indian government supports Sri Lanka to buy the consignment of urea fertilizer. Government has ordered a consignment of 60,000 metric tons of urea from Oman. The fish ship left a port off in Oman and heading towards Sri Lanka, the minister said. He said that the distribution process of urea fertilizer will be conducted on priority basis. However, the government plans to provide fertilizer for all farmers, the minister emphasized. The first consignment will be provided to paddy farmers. The second consignment of 25,000 metric tons of urea fertilizer will reach Sri Lanka within week limits next week, minister said. He said that the priority category of farmers of the distribution process of the second consignment are corn farmers. Minister Amaravira further said that the government has already allocated necessary funds to purchase fertilizer for the upcoming Maha cultivation season. The World Bank will provide Sri Lanka 1.10 billion, rather $110 billion for the process. At the same time, World Food Programme will distribute 375,000 tons of fertilizer packed to low-income families. The minister further said that the government has instructed the state banks to provide relief for small-scale farmers. All agri-loans obtained by farmers who cultivated land less than 5 acres will be waived off by state banks.
Ministry of Agriculture has requested all agrarian organizations to make the relevant payments at the agrarian development centers to purchase urea fertilizer based on the selected farmers list. A vessel with urea fertilizer under the Indian Credit Line facility expected to arrive in the country on June 9th, according to the ministry. The mechanism has been prepared by the Agrarian Development Department, Commercial Fertilizer Company and Ceylon Fertilizer Company to distribute the fertilizer among the paddy farmers upon receiving. A discussion in this regard was held with the participation of Minister Mahinda Amaravira at the ministry today. With each fertilizer sack priced at 10,000 rupees, 50 kilograms of fertilizer will be provided for 1 hectare of paddy fields in the wet zone, while 100 kilos of fertilizer will be provided for 1 hectare of paddy fields in the dry zone.
And meanwhile, cabinet approval was granted to re-establish the cabinet subcommittee on cost of living. The relevant proposal was presented by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
The cabinet subcommittee is tasked with the responsibility to provide the necessary policy and practical solutions to keep the cost of living stable.
The cabinet subcommittee is chaired by the president, and the subcommittee is comprised of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, Ministers Douglas Devananda, Bandula Gunawardena, Mahinda Amaravira, Dr. Ramesh Patrana, Kanchana Wijayasekara and Nalin Fernando. The cabinet of ministers also granted approval for the establishment of a committee on food safety chaired by the Minister of Trade and with the participation of secretaries of relevant ministries to support the cabinet subcommittee on cost of living.
Cabinet approval was granted for the signing of the exchange papers related to the Japanese grant program on Human Resource Development Scholarship. The relevant proposal was presented by Prime Minister Wickremesinghe. 282 million Japanese yen have been allocated for the scholarship program, which provide executive grade officers in the state sector to pursue their postgraduate programs in recognized universities in Japan during this year. Litro Gas Company says a tanker with 3,724 metric tons of LP gas is expected to arrive in the country on Saturday. Accordingly, the vessel was expected to arrive between the 6th and the 8th of this month.
Litro Gas Company indicated that the prevailing weather condition has caused the delay. The relevant tank is expected to arrive in the country in accordance with the agreement reached between Litro Gas Company and the World Bank to import 100,000 metric tons of LP gas into the country. Under this agreement, another vessel with LP gas expected to arrive in the country between the 11th and the 12th of this month, according to the chairman of the company, Modita Pires. Lanka IOC filling stations continue to engage in an uninterrupted distribution of fuel at present amidst long queues near the filling stations. Lanka IOC company has indicated that the distribution of fuel is conducted under maximum capacity. However, reports have indicated that some areas have not received fuel over a period of 1 week, while the token system has received mixed feedback regarding its successful implementation across the country.
Minister Cardinal says that he expects all Sri Lankans to resolve the fuel crisis. He invited the opposition to join the fuel purchasing and ordering committees to expedite those activities. Addressing the Parliament today, Minister Cardinal invited opposition MPs to join the fuel importing process. He said that opposition MPs can inspect the process conducted by his ministry. The minister said Sri Lanka needs $319 million to purchase fuel required for next 2 weeks. However, the central bank can provide only $125 million for the purpose. The minister said the President, Prime Minister and all other stakeholders of oil importing process held an important discussion yesterday. The government requested support of the private banks to implement fuel purchasing process. The economic outlook for the UK and the rest of the world has deteriorated materially. The Bank of England has warned.
And energy and fuel costs are rising rapidly around the world, pushing up prices generally more quickly. However, UK banks are in a position to weather even a severe economic downturn. The bank said it told banks to keep more money in rainy funds to ensure that they can weather any storm. The bank's committee comes into latest financial stability report. International forecasters such as the IMF and OECD have said Britain is more susceptible to recessions and persistently high inflation than other Western countries, all of which are grappling with energy and commodity market shocks. While the bank said that the UK's bank sector was well placed to cope with a severe downturn, it said that it must increase the amount of money that's set aside to absorb shocks. Starting a year from now, banks will require to set aside a sum equal to 2% of those assets as a buffer, as opposed to the normal 1%. The Financial Policy Committee said that covered every rate in either direction depending on how the global economy pans out.
Outgoing Ambassador of Sultanate of Oman to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Juma Hamdan Hassan Al Malik Al Shehi, called on the Speaker Mahinda Yapa yesterday. The Omani ambassador said that he would support the strengthening of bilateral relations between the two countries in fuel, gas and investment opportunities. The need to strengthen relations between the two countries through the Sri Lankan-Oman Parliamentary Friendship Association was also discussed. The Speaker appreciated Ambassador Juma Hamdan's support to Sri Lanka during his 8 years in office. The Secretary General of Parliament, Mr. Dhammika Dasanayake, was also present at this occasion. Sri Lankans are making a tremendous effort to continue their day-to-day life amidst the ongoing economic crisis. As they lose many facilities they had earlier, we could see some courageous efforts being made to face the current difficulties. Small-scale fishermen in northern Sri Lanka turned towards ancient methods to sail their boats as they have no fuel for fishing activities.
Fishermen in northern Sri Lanka face many challenges throughout past 3 decades. They lost their livelihood during the war period, and even today they suffer as thousands of foreign fishermen invade the traditional fishing grounds of Tamil fishermen. Fuel crisis has threatened the tribe livelihood drastically. However, those courageous men are still struggling to go to sea and continue their livelihood activities. As the engines of their small motorboats are silent due to dried fuel tanks, they fixed sails to their boats to conduct fishing activities. However, they are not rich enough to buy material to make proper sails. Instead, they use old saris of their waves and the old clothes to stitch together and make sails. The present crisis has threatened lifestyles of many Sri Lankans, but yet they are fighting back.
Archbishop of Colombo Cardinal Cardinal Ranjit today called for the resignation of President and the government and to form a new multi-party interim administration to resolve the crisis in the nation and to bring in a total system change.
And also the Cardinal proposed holding an election once some kind of stability is achieved.
It is with sadness that we note that our beloved motherland has fallen into a state of total economic bankruptcy which has never been experienced before. The resultant level of suffering heaped upon our people has become intolerable by the day and has pushed them into a dark abyss which cannot be explained in human words. With the appointment of the new Prime Minister, hopes were somewhat rekindled of a recovery, and so we prefer to remain silent in order not to be an obstacle to solutions being found for the current problems. We observed the developments patiently before making any definite comments. Yet, since the present plight the people are facing has become even worse and unbearably painful, as a citizen of this country and as a spiritual leader, I have felt it my duty not to wait in silence any longer and to speak out on behalf of the people who are undergoing this suffering. It has to be stated very clearly that the present crisis and the despondent situation it has brought about has to be directly attributed to the President and the government of Sri Lanka for the short-sighted and arbitrary decisions they have continued to make in the last 2.5 years. From the very beginning, we did not hesitate to condemn the stubborn and oppressive burdens that had been placed on the people, fleecing them and stealing their money and the assets of the country in a corrupt manner. Yet, up until now, there has not been any investigation or bringing to book of those responsible for these corrupt and dishonest practices and decisions. Still, we notice that no serious attempt is being made or any plans or vision prepared to solve the problems this country is facing in the matter of the ongoing severe economic crisis, the acute shortage of fuel, electricity supply, medicines, needs of the agro-industry, education services or any other of the essential services. While that is so, people are spending days in queues, going through untold hardships in order to obtain the essentials, and the government has no cohesive plan or project which could definitely free them from this situation. Hence, on behalf of the suffering people, what I am earnestly requesting from the President and the government of Sri Lanka is to accept responsibility for this sad situation and step down from their positions, since they have no moral right to continue in office anymore under these circumstances, and hand over the power back to the people without causing further suffering to them. If that happens, the people will be enabled to establish a multi-party interim government in order to effect the desired total and structural system change in the manner that is credible and transparent to all.
The Colombo Fort Police has apprehended a suspect who was invading the Ratnapura High Court over a rape case while refuging at the Golf Face protest site. The suspect was wanted over the rape case number HCR/111/2020 of the High Court of Ratnapura. The court had also issued an open warrant on the suspect over the case. The suspect has been identified as a 25-year-old resident of Veralua, Ratnapura. The police indicated that this suspect had been hiding in the protest site, evading his arrest for nearly 2 months. The suspect has been remanded till July 12th by the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court and expected to be produced before the Ratnapura High Court subsequently.
And meanwhile, the Met Department says strong winds can be expected at times the western slopes of the Central Hills, western, southern and northwestern provinces. The department has further indicated that showers will occur at times in Sabaragamuwa province and in Kandy, Nurelia, Gol, Mathura districts. Reports have indicated that areas in the western slopes of the Central Highlands experienced heavy showers with gusty winds yet again. Reports on 3 uprootings and damages to power lines were also reported due to the severe windstorm prevailing in the country hillside. It has also been further reported that a heavy foggy condition also prevailed in these areas apart from the heavy showers. Accordingly, Nurelia Disaster Management Centre has cautioned the motorists to be vigilant while driving under such conditions. One of the oldest tuskers in the country passed away today. The tusker Sampath was 77 years of age and at its demise.
The tusker Sampath had died around 7:30 this morning at the Pinnawala Elephant Orphanage, according to Deputy Director of Orphanage, Navod Abesingha. The tusker arrived back at the Pinnawala Elephant Orphanage from the National Zoological Gardens in Dehiwala earlier this year. The tusker was receiving treatments for an ailment upon its arrival and was recovering well under the care of the veterinary staff of the Pinnawala Elephant Orphanage. However, reports have indicated that the tusker Sampath had collapsed this morning and succumbed a short while after. The staff of the orphanage had taken steps to conduct a final rites for the tusker. That's all the news we have on local news. Stay tuned for international stories coming up next.
Prima Kotami Pantan.
Welcome back. On foreign news, American police have arrested a suspect after 6 people were killed in a mass shooting at an Independence Day parade in Highland Park, Illinois.
The police said that the suspect, Obert E. Crimo, aged 22, was detained after a brief chase. The gunman climbed onto a roof, shooting randomly at spectators using a high-powered rifle. And in the latest mass shooting to hit the United States, there has been on every week of 2022. President Joe Biden said he was shocked by the violence. Hours later, 2 police officers were wounded in a shooting at Philadelphia during a 4th of July fireworks display. Mr. Crimo was detained after a manhunt. The suspect was once named a person of interest in the shooting, but after his arrest, police said that they believed he was responsible. The gunman opened fire at the parade near the city of Chicago just a few minutes after it began.
Prima Kotami Pantan.
Sports is about cricket, and 3 new young bowlers have been selected for the second test match between Australia and Sri Lanka, and the second test match will commence on the 8th of July.
The match will be played at Galle International Cricket Stadium. Sri Lanka Cricket announced today that former under-19 captain Dunit Velalage has been called up for the squad. Meanwhile, Mahesh Deekshana and Lakshita Manasinghe have also called upon for the squad ahead the second test. Sri Lanka Cricket in a statement has indicated that left-arm spinner Lasith Ambudania has been removed from the squad, while Praveen Jayavikrama has tested positive for COVID-19 and directed for 5-day mandatory isolation. Sri Lanka's former captain Angelo Matthews tested positive for COVID-19 previously. Australia secured a 10-wicket victory against Sri Lanka in the first test match. The second test match will live telecast on ChannelEye of the national television from July 8th to the 12th.
Prima Kotami Pantan.
That's all the news we have for tonight. Do join us tomorrow at 8:50 p.m. for the very latest on ChannelEye. I'm Delanjali, together with Charita, signing off. Good night.
Good night.
டிவி நேசத்தின் நெருக்கம்.
காதல் வானிலே காதல் வானிலே ஓ பாடும் தேனிலா பாடும் தேனிலா ஓ தந்ததே தந்ததே சங்கீதம் வந்ததே வந்ததே சந்தோஷம் சம் சம் சம். ஆடியாம் ஒரு கோடியாம் மணி தீபங்கள் தீபங்கள்
ஆடியும் துதி பாடியும் ஒளி ஏற்றுங்கள் ஏற்றுங்கள்
திங்கள் சூடிடும் தேவன் கோவிலில் எங்கள் பாடலை பாடுங்கள்.
என்றும் வாழ்ந்திடும் தென்றல் போலவே எங்கள் காதலை வாழ்த்துங்கள்.
நாள்தோறும் ஆனந்தம் தேரோடும் நம் வாழ்விலே
காதல் வானிலே காதல் வானிலே பாடும் தேனிலா பாடும் தேனிலா
தந்ததே தந்ததே சங்கீதம் வந்ததே வந்ததே சந்தோஷம் சம் சம் சம்.
காதல் வானிலே காதல் வானிலே
பாடும் தேனிலா பாடும்